Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Creating in Fortnite. My name is Shane Kelly Meyer, and I am the community manager for Fortnite Creative and UEFN. And I am so happy to be here today to share with you some stuff we've been cooking up that y'all have been very excited for. I know our last live stream on this topic did very, very, very well. And I'm hoping that with what you've seen so far over the months that we've had this tool kind of available to check out, that you have come with some great questions for us and the team here. And that topic is scene graph. Yay! Also, hi, everybody. Hello. Hi, nice to see you all. How are you all doing today? All right,
Well,
cool. And we will throw to our guests. Hello, guys. How are you?
Hello.
hello, good.
Welcome. So happy to have you back again for round two of Scene Graph, and it's a packed schedule that we have. So I'm super excited to see how y'all feel about that chat. Hi. Oh, you've got some great questions today. Well, wonderful. Get
We've
them
got some
prepped.
great people to answer them.
That's right. That's right. And if you have any questions, feel free put bracket question or try to make it apparent that it's a question. We'll have the lovely mods pulling questions for you as you go. Also, keep an eye out for some links that we'll drop as we go. But other than that, let me go ahead and throw popcorn to, let's see, I'm going to popcorn to Curtis for a brief introduction for those who might not know Curtis.
Sure, thanks, Shane. It's good to be back on stream. I'm Curtis Schmidt. I'm the technical director for the framework area of the Unreal Engine. Mainly, I think people here might know me for kind of leading all of the design of the scene graph and a lot of the pieces that we're building out for the UEFN space. So, yeah, it's good to be back. Happy to talk about all this stuff.
Yay. Definitely, definitely. And throw to Rodney. Welcome, Rodney.
Thanks. Sorry I missed last time. I was vacationing, but my job is to make sure that the tools are easy to use and are enjoyable. Get out the tools are just simple, and you get to make what you want to make. Spend a lot of my time trying to convince Curtis of things we need to do. So happy to be able to work with the community and get feedback and be able to bother Curtis.
We love that for Curtis.
That's never a bother. It's all fun.
That's great. And then last but definitely not least, the wonderful Remy. Welcome, Remy.
Hello. So I am a senior technical product manager, but on the Unreal side of things. So I follow up a lot with the AI and, well, runtime gameplay AI and the gameplay teams. And I've been focusing a lot, like we've saw in the last year, on scene graph workflows. And that's mostly what we're going to be able to share here. All the things that we've bothered Curtis with and all the different teams at Epic. Well, we now have great, great things to be able to show you today.
Yay, so exciting. Awesome, awesome. Welcome, welcome. Well, with that, I guess for those who might not know, we always kind of not to spring this on you guys, but I just realized there when we do live streams, it's always somebody's first live stream, and it could be somebody's first kind of foray into scene graph. Would we be willing to just give like a brief overview of what scene graph is and what it can do? Because I know we've got also some UE devs in here.
Yeah. So trying to keep this high level because it's a pretty far-reaching piece of tech. So Scene Graph is a game object framework. It's kind of the spiritual equivalent of the actor system in Unreal today. We designed it to be kind of future-facing with where we're going towards, designing the metaverse or like the shared 3D ecosystem space. Works, kind of natively with how Verse works and all of our ideas there. So, in terms of what you can do with it, it's how you put meshes in the scene and add logic to them and create bigger prefab systems and reuse content throughout the game in kind of mix and match ways. So that's the really high level view of what the scene graph is. Over time in UEFN, you'll start to see that most of our new features will be built on top of scene graph ideas, and we'll start to also morph things that historically been built with actors, like the creative props and the creative devices, and those things will start being built with the new scene graph entities and components.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that rundown, Curtis. Appreciate it. Um, yeah, well, we've got a lot to dive in today. Everyone in chat, if you've got questions, keep them coming. We'll try to break after we're being shown some really cool stuff and the questions that are on topic. That way we can kind of flow easily with what we have pulled up. We'll do our best to throw out there. So keep those questions coming. And with that, I guess I'll throw it to the team. Let's kick it off.
All right. So, uh, as we've been saying, we've got a huge schedule, so we'll get right ahead to it inside of the editor.
Yay. We
So,
love editor time here, don't we,
yes,
chat?
some of you might recognize this project, at least some of you that have SIGGRAPH experience. Sadly, we're not offering this prefab feature example anymore right now because fab content not being compatible for the moment being, but we'll for sure offer it again in the future. But I've basically rebuilt this feature example so that it can still work with SceneGraph. So as you can see, I've built, again, this entire environment. And since the last time we talked, you might notice one thing about this outliner that immediately jumps to the eyes. We won't talk about it much because that's just details, but you've got these huge numbers here, these series of numbers next to any content that you create. So place actors, if I create a new entity, you'll see we have what's called a GUID basically next to those. And we were kind enough to gray it out, and that when you rename something, it basically automatically gets to the important part, which is what you want to name it. Otherwise, what is the GUID used for? Basically to avoid any conflicts so that people can work with different teams, different people working on their own side, creating entities. And even if both of you name your thing entity, well, there won't be any confusion because you've got entity with this GUID while the other person has entity with that GUID. So that's all we'll say about it. Otherwise, it shouldn't affect your life except from polluting visually a bit the outliner. But again, we made it grayed out so it's not always in your face as much. But why did we develop this feature? Well, the number one feature that was asked a lot by UEFN users is, of course, one file per actor. But in this case, we call it one file per entity. So this is a feature that's coming very soon to you guys. And if I actually go into my project settings to enable it, so I'll just open the project settings, and I won't be able to show you the project settings right now. But if I take a screenshot, you'll basically see at the bottom over there that you have an entry for one file entity that you can enable. And eventually you'll also have an entry for prefab in place editor, which I'll also enable on my project locally because that's what we'll be looking at right after. So I just checked the checkbox for one file per entity. Now the editor is processing a bit, of course. And really, what one file per entity will enable is just that whatever new content you create. So now if I go ahead and create a new entity, it will actually be its own separate file. So if I save this, you can see that the UMap doesn't have a star next to it, the level, like it used to. Like everything that you did in your SceneGraph world used to be all part of the UMap. So there was really a hard time collaborating. You could still create prefabs in the prefab folder and collaborate through that. So different people creating different prefabs. But for the content of the map, everything was locked down. So now that we have one file per entity, and as you can see, we also have the feedback here in URC because my URC is active, that I have new entities that I have added and I can actually move them. Now, this is all great for content that I'm creating on the fly, and anything new that I create, if I go into my prefabs and take another light post, again, this is a new file and it's its own file. But what if I have a level that I've been working on for months and it's all built into the UMap? Well, just like for one file per actor, if you've ever messed with it inside the full Unreal, you can just right-click on the world and save owned entities as internal files. I think that's the contrary, though. It should be saved as external, that's saying. Probably if I reload the map because I just opened it, but Basically, I won't do it right now because it also takes a few minutes and I don't want to make us wait on the stream. But basically, once you have that feature enabled, you can either save everything that was external to be internal or vice versa. Now, most likely what's going on here is that I might have already ran this command because if I take any of the assets that are being checked out individually. So I had already ran the command. So I could do this if I want to roll it back in. So we were working one file per actor. It creates tons of different files on the disk. I want to potentially go back to being the sole owner of the map and being the only one working together to make sure that no other files are being checked out by anyone else. And you run this and it will resave everything as internal files. Now, if everything has been internalized, this command should become save owned entities as external files so that you can re-split up everything.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really, really great if you're working with multiple people and also for converting existing content to being able to work.
How do you feel about that, chat? Does that sound good? Is that helpful? I know I saw a couple of yes earlier when you were starting to show it off. You're like, yay.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. It works as you expected. It's even goes into the external actors folder, same that you would see with one file per actor. So anyone who's common with the workflow should be common with that. There's not much else to it, honestly. You just use URC, check in your changes, and again, that GUID should really help with avoiding any conflicts that you have between prefabs, between entities in the world itself. As you can see, I've got tons of dock barrels, but they're all unique because of that GUID.
Very nice. Ooh, we're getting a lot of good questions.
We might go ahead and take some questions related to one file per entities if there are any.
Yeah, let me see. Any questions specifically about one file per actor? It looks like we've got yeah, looks like most of our questions are about what's coming, but I think we can hold off. And then we've got some questions that are about like, hey, this is what I'm trying to make. Do you have any advice? Let's hold off on that just because we just got started, and when we dive in a little bit deeper, we can kind of maybe like when we're in the sample part, that would probably be better. Cool.
Right.
Cool.
One extra thing to mention, I don't have it here in this version, but it'll be there in a future version, so it'll be coming before the end of the year. But inside of the URC chicken window, right now you have the asset column and the file column. We added the type column because with one file per actor, well, one file per entity actually, when you move things around, you might get redirectors. So you don't know what's an entity anymore and what's a redirector. And if you have your entity and your redirector that have the exact same name, the exact same GUID, you won't be able to tell which is which. So if you want to check in only one of those or revert one of those, we added the type column directly in that window so that you can basically better work with your content. It became obvious because of one file per entity, and if you're moving stuff around, that there's some redirectors could get created, and now you're going to be more aware of what you're doing. And just in general, it helps to just know the type. Like, yes, I have the extension here, but knowing that this is an entity and this is the UEFN project itself at a glance is, of course, going to help a lot.
Someone is asking, is the GUID enabled by default on future islands?
Yes, it is for anything that you create. So even if you open, let me actually take an example here. This feature example was created a while ago while we didn't have GUIDs. But if I open this prefab, and you can see that these entities actually don't have GUIDs. But if I was to duplicate them, boom, GUID.
So
Boom,
anything new you
GUID.
make. Yeah.
Exactly. So from the future on, anything that you create will have a GUID. And I believe that even in some instances, it might be possible that some content might not be functional. You might, I know that Ronnie at some point had trouble referencing some of the entities. So if you do have such issues in any case, maybe just try duplicating it. It'll add a GUID to it, and then you should be good.
Yeah, we believe this is a bug we're trying to track down and fix currently.
Cool. Awesome. Someone was asking, which I think is good to kind of touch on. We touched a little bit on the overview, but someone was wondering what the benefit is of this coming from someone who's trying to understand it better.
for one file per entity, the real benefit is really multi-user teams. So I could have someone working on this dock over here while someone else is working on the composition of the village that's over here. And I could have someone else actually working on that seashore here, trying to add some visual art to this area. So it really allows different people from different trades not only to work on the assets, but really to work directly on the map's content without stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah, really for revision control is the main benefit, making sure that everything's unique and that when you go to submit something, you're not like, we're not relying on the names or anything. It's all, we can guarantee everything's going to be that you're working on is unique and there's not going to be any clashes for revision control.
In the past, all you would have seen in the URC checkout window at this point would have been the level, the Lake Village level, the U map, because that's all that was getting checked out, regardless how many prefabs you put in the map, regardless if someone else was working on it, all you could check out was the U map. Now we have this level of granularity that allows different people to check out different stuff. And in theory, the U map will only be checked out when you modify your world settings or other global settings that are really part of the map and not part of any actor or entity that you put it in.
Oh, well, we got more questions about about this. Let's see. Does one file per entity enable to transact an entity between UEFN projects? Enable you to? Maybe. Does one file per entity enable you to transact an entity between UEFN projects?
I was definitely able to copy paste entities yesterday between two projects. Of course, you always run into the limitation of Epic Game Store. I think only allows you to run one copy of Unreal Editor for Fortnite. So if you basically close a map, reopen a project, and copy paste through a notepad, that should work. It's
I
not the
mean,
best workflow,
it's
but
a
it should
file on
work.
disk now, right? So you can copy and paste from there.
Yeah, also that should work.
Yeah. And then prefabs work pretty well too, being able to copy and paste between projects. We do that quite frequently.
We do that quite frequently. The only thing you might encounter is that there will still be some references, but if you close and reopen your project, the Fix-It tool will detect that there are some bad references, and it'll ask you, do you want to fix it? You click Fix It, and everything should work. So if you have any errors trying to launch your session, I did it yesterday and I had like 200 errors. Oh no, all of my prefabs are broken and don't validate the project. So of course I can't do anything and launch the session. Close the project or close the editor just to be safe, reopen it, and the tool fixed it by itself. Phew.
Whew. We've got another question. Any reason to show the GUID to the end user?
Yeah, so there is one, maybe a future reason that you'd need to see the GUIDs. In the long term, things like prefabs and the level becoming a giant prefab itself will have full representation in verse. So the GUIDs are part of the name of that entity that will be reflected into verse. You'll be able to shrink them and use a shorter name, but then you have the chance that you collide in terms of your file names. So it's a trade-off that you have to make. But this guarantees that you have unique names for all of the entities when we reflect them into code, which you can't have two things in code that have the same name. So that's one of the reasons in the future where it will matter.
Cool. Good to know. And then it seems like we have one last good question about this. It's at least adjacent. The player entities, even not being officially released, they already exist and interact with scene queries. How safe are we to use it, at least for stuff such as logic only components on it?
So it's hard to say in terms of safety and the evolution that's going to happen there. We do have some work done to start reflecting the character pawns as entities, which is what I think Sprinter Max was calling out. We have not tested that as a workflow for end users thoroughly, and we are actively working to try to make that an official thing. When we do, that could result in some behavioral changes as we kind of solidify all of that. So you can use it today. It could change in the future. Make sure to test islands with that specific feature because it's not something that is, I'd say, like fully supported and well tested to guarantee its behavior between releases just yet.
All right. Okay. This one, I don't know if this one is on topic for me. I haven't heard this acronym before, but I guess we can throw this last one in here. Does OFPE have an impact on memory and storage usage? Or is that Unreal Engine specific? It came from the Unreal Engine chat. So
No, it's one file per entity.
okay, okay.
So it shouldn't have a significant, like, it's going to be the same as one file per actor in terms of your storage usage. So depending on what revision control system you're using, lots and lots of files is something that you have to know how to deal with when you set up the revision control thing. But that's basically the only impact. It otherwise isn't really, it's just where we store the data. Um,
Oh, we got
Should
another
should get a
OFPE.
pretty big speed boost from using URC, right? Where you're not like having to resubmit the UMAP every single time and then just more smaller files.
yeah.
Cool. Someone else also asked, will one file per entity ever store child entities of entities as their own files?
That is something in the future that we're looking into providing. That's a two-step process, though. Curtis mentioned that eventually we want prefabs to be like as a level instance. So basically, prefabs will be as feature complete as level instances are, and we want to basically replace the workflow that using a prefab is just like using a level instance, and you can have an entire level being put in a prefab. And so that, of course, will need to have one file per actor that in your prefab, you can split the prefab itself at different levels, which is not something that we have right now and we're ready to showcase, but it is something we're actively working on. So step one will be to be able to split the prefab itself into multiple files, and step two will be able to split instances directly in the world into multiple files. So by default, even though you split the original into multiple files, drop it in the world, it is still one file, so that you don't end up with level instances. We have these issues that we know could be a problem with data storage, that it generates tons and tons and tons of file. Well, by default, it is going to be one file, and then you can split it further. And if something is already split up, you can also roll it back into a single. So we're basically going to try to offer as much flexibility as possible to go both ways. You can have as many files as you want. If you need to split this up into multiple entities, that is one for level artists, one for level designers, basically you can be creative with how you use one file per entity to split up your prefabs to allow multiple people to work on it. But also we'll be offering all of the tools to make sure that you can really optimize the contents of your maps so that there's as few files as you need for the end content to make sense to be placed individually.
Yeah, we really feel strongly about like giving our users that control. Like you guys set it up to whatever makes sense for your project and your workflow. So you have control over the, how granular it is and how many files you need or how many files you don't need. If like you're, a single user, or one person team, then maybe it doesn't make sense to have everything as broken out into files. But really, I mean, that should be in your guys' hands to control.
And you can already do so to some degree by doing prefabs inside of prefabs. So in this case, I've got the barrel and the lamp, and the dock lamp is also a prefab. So you've got these 3 different recipes that people can work on. But this is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is literally that if I want to, even though this is another prefab and this is not a prefab, well, in this case it is, but it could not be, I could make these 3 be separate from the main prefab file. So basically, even if something is not a prefab, and even if it is a prefab, you are still going to be able to, in the context of this prefab, split it up into a separate file and being able to work at it with multiple people checking it out.
Awesome. We've got a couple other quick questions. One of them being, oh gosh, I had it and then it disappeared. Where'd you go? Oh, I appreciate you mods organizing the questions, but Will, I do have this one. We've been asked this a couple times. Are you able to migrate? Just in general, we've gotten them like 3 times.
Migrate like from one file per entity to one file per entity. If that's
Yeah, maybe that one. I also got just can you move like migrate from project to project as well? So there's two separate ones we could maybe cover, just to make sure they're clear.
Yes, the migrate your content is once you turn on the feature and right click on the world, you'll be able to either internalize or externalize everything. And the other one is basically what Rodney mentioned earlier, is that these are now files on disk. So if you find the file on disk and you do have the same content in your other projects and you copy all of the references, then you should be able to, yes.
Yay! Hear that, chat? Okay, double
Let us know if
checking.
anything doesn't work though when you try it out. We've tried it out a bunch of times, but if there's anything broken in
Oh,
your specific scenario,
I
definitely
don't
let us
think
know.
I've tried it from the editor itself, so I'm gonna make myself a note to do that, and then if it doesn't work, we'll fix it.
I did try it yesterday. That's how
Oh,
I
okay.
copied your prefab example.
Sweet.
So
very
yeah,
nice. I remember the question we had, and that was just, is this available now? This exact feature we're talking about, is that already out in the wild?
it
I
is
believe, yeah.
not yet
Okay.
out, but it is coming very
It's
soon.
coming. It's coming, chat. Get
The-
excited. It's coming.
I don't have the specifics for every feature we're going to show today, but I can tell you with confidence that all of these are going to be out before 38. Except if I mention them specifically that they're beyond 38. But
Cool.
everything that we'll be showcasing today are things that should be coming out within the 37 dot something time frame.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, someone clarified. I think people mean using the right click migrate option.
Oh, I have not tried it, so we will need to try that.
Ooh,
Normally, that's the bulletproof way of migrating stuff, so I would definitely expect it to work.
cool. And if it doesn't, let us know. But you know the deal, chat.
We'll most
Forums,
likely
forums.
test it after the stream, so we'll know before you guys know.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's move along then. And if we haven't answered your question yet, we're just trying to keep it kind of on topic with whatever we're talking about, so it flows well. So keep them coming. And if you asked a question earlier and you're like, "Well, it was about scene graph, why hasn't been answered?" Don't worry, we'll get to it. We promise. But yeah, let's cover the next part.
All right. The next one has been a long time coming, and a lot of people gave this feedback. Actually, it's one of the most requested things apart from monofile per entity, and that is drag and drop support.
Woo.
Ooh, so both in the outliner and in the prefab editor. So if I have either my static meshes, because we didn't only do it with prefabs. So yes, I could just drop my prefab in here, and it created that light post directly within my group at the pivots of the parent that I dropped it into. So if I have this crate here, and I move it over here, and I want to create a light post underneath that crate, it actually takes its position. And it actually created the entire prefab directly there. So that's
Nice.
already a huge time saver instead of having to drag it in the world. Oh, it's named Z, and my prefab was actually with the D. So now I need to go all the way down and drag it. Nah, not anymore. You just
Yeah.
drag and drop directly where you need it. And as I was saying, what's really magical is you can also drop anything that is in your verse asset digest. So this static mesh here that I could assign as a component, I drag and drop here. Magic. I automatically have an entity that's named with the name of my mesh, assets, or whatever else. So I did it with a static mesh. It could be a VFX. It could be anything else that goes into your asset digest.
I'll tell you what, Remy, the entire chat is blowing up. They're very excited. W's in
This
the
Mission
makes me
chat.
so happy.
successful.
Yeah.
Yes,
Awesome.
just also the name that it creates automatically. I mean, I can show you guys what everyone who's been working with SceneGraph, what their months has been like. You create an entity. You name your entity. Light post 01. I'm going to add my mesh component. Oh, it's in a list. Now it's another click. Oh, damn it. Um, light post. Like, we have internal teams that had to go through this every single time they created a new entity in their world that they had an actor for. Not anymore.
Yeah.
We're
I don't know the
done with
name. I need to
this.
see a picture and drag and drop.
Yeah. we're gonna make drag and
Awesome.
drop t-shirts.
Oh.
I lived to see drag and drop implemented.
Yay.
So that's one aspect of drag and drop, but that's not the only thing that we did, because we care about you guys. We care about the community. And if you have your entity like this, that you already have your transfer component, and you actually want to add an asset to it that already exists, well, you can also directly drag that to the details panel, and it'll add the component to it. So no, you should basically never need to pick things from this menu anymore, which we'll go into details later. Will not look the same anymore in the future, but yes, this is like game changer. And of course, it is not limited to only the world. If we go into the prefab editor and I take my content drawer and I drag a light post in here, it does exactly the same thing, and I can have a prefab directly in there. And I believe that I can even drag a prefab directly into the prefab editor.
Whoa.
And it actually created that prefab. It doesn't work
Awesome.
with static meshes, and it doesn't in that case yet. Oh, yes,
Okay.
it did. Yes,
Oh.
it is. I
Oh,
thought it didn't.
surprises all around.
Surprises all around. I was sure it worked, but I wasn't sure now because of the outliner. But yes, it actually created an entity. So basically, any drag and drop functionality you can think of between the prefab editor and the outliner is now functional, and it will work the same in the world viewer and in the prefab editor. The one thing, though, that we still didn't do yet, and we will get to it, but it's a bit more work, is if I drag this inside of the world, we still have an actor. And that's simply because we don't want to change everyone's workflows directly in the worlds. That if somehow you open a project that now has SceneGraph enabled and you used to be able to drag and drop actors, and now somehow, oh my God, it's creating an entity. What's an entity? No, don't worry. We won't change your workflow. And what we'll do is we'll add something in the editor preferences so that you can specify if you want to drag and drop by default to create an entity or an actor. So you can basically have it to your heart's desire. So
Nice. Yes, and they're feeling it. We're feeling it, right, chat? Yeah. This will make workflow faster, which we love. Wow. Crazy. Wow.
it's about what it is today. It's
Hundo.
all about making content creation faster. And we
Yeah.
knew it was a pain from the start, which is what we've been saying all along, that things will get better. Things
There we
are
go.
getting better. So
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Awesome. Anybody have any questions about this? Or everyone just excited? No, I just need speedy vibes. That's right. Hi everyone. It's good to see you all. Yeah, gonna be a huge upgrade. Great. Awesome. Cool. Okay. No actors needed, only entities. Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. What
all
else you got
right.
for us, Remy?
Well, next in line, you guys will love this even more. So, if any one of you has
Ooh.
worked with level instances,
Okay.
and if you guys agree that the prefab editor right now is not the ideal editing context because, well, the lighting isn't right, you don't have Lumen, you don't have Nanite, because this is not yet a full renderer, which is something we want to get to eventually. But what we did is kind of think outside the box. And hey, look, we have these level instances that have an edit in place workflow. So why not do exactly the same? So I could edit prefab and then edit this in this context. And then, oh, how does it look in my world? Oh, I'll save, it'll reload. It takes a lot of time. Not anymore. Just like level instances, if I right click on something, and you need to have the project setting enabled for that. So it's prefab in place editor. I'll show back the screenshot just so you guys know which one I'm talking about. It is this option here, prefab in place editor. So once you enable that, you'll have this option in the right click menu that is edits your prefab in place. And once you do that, you get very similarly to level instances, a bar at the bottom that basically tells you you're now in the editing mode for that prefab. So what we did there is that we actually hide the instance, and put the original in its place. So what you're seeing now and what you're editing is not the instance anymore, but rather directly the original. So if I was to change that, it didn't change everywhere in my world because I'm still editing one original at a time. But if I go into save, then all of the buildings that were using this in my world will automatically have that same offset applied. So, I mean, I could do multiple modifications to this. So I could go in and edit in place, copy. Well, let's take the roof, put it up. Let's take this whole level, copy it. Oh, it didn't paste it properly. Okay, so maybe copy paste doesn't work in there. I hadn't tried it, so we'll make sure that we get that fixed for you folks. But yeah, basically, if I was to put another prefab in there, or I
We're
just
doing it
added a
live,
light
folks.
post. Yes, exactly. I could
Do it
actually
live.
go to that prefab here and find my actual floor and add it in here.
Someone's asking if the feature has a hotkey. Does it, Remy?
I haven't checked in the right-click menu. I don't believe so, but that's maybe something we can get to.
Make it faster.
Yep.
Even faster. Max fast.
So I believe the editor just lagged a bit. I might need to uh, reboot the editor just there.
We're testing Remy's computer today with the live streaming.
Yeah, I also added a bunch of stuff, copy pasted, and it didn't work. So maybe my object got into some weird states. But yeah, I had tested this before, and this should work. So, all right.
While the editor thinks about it,
Yeah.
we think this is a big improvement to the workflows. Just being able to go in, see your prefabs in the context of the world, and be able to like move things around. That way you can see like the buildings next to it, how your changes are affecting, or like going to look next to those other buildings and go in and being able to quickly iterate on them where you're dragging and dropping, and once we get it all fixed, and then still a bit early on this feature, but already like we're seeing a lot of improvements to people's workflow where they're able to make changes in the scene and really see it with all the context. I think like we really we're going to, we'll maybe talk about a little bit about this later, but I mean, really, it's like, we have like three major workflows for prefabs where, we have our prefab editor. We want that to be better. You'll be able to edit your prefabs in place, and then eventually you'll be able to have your prefabs in the world and make changes to them just as you would like editing your level, but you're adding things to your prefab and making changes, and then being able to in this instance of it in the world, being able to make changes and then say like, hey, I like the changes I've made to this one in the world, and be able to like right click on it and go like, hey, make this save this as the new base prefab, and then that will then all your other prefabs will update. So we have like three major workflows for editing your prefabs, and so it's always like you'll probably like maybe you only use one of them, or like I would probably use all three, and being able to quickly iterate that way. So it's just kind of like those three prefab workflows kind of work, for different situations and different, like just different, how differently people work. So we're trying to get all three of those workflows working really well and make that seamless.
Awesome. Phenomenal. Let's see. Do we have any other good questions? I did get one kind of random one. How could you use scene graph for first person related to vehicles? Is that possible? I assume we haven't tested that specifically. It's very
I think
specific.
right now I'd say you can't do much with that.
Okay. Good to know. Soon to come. If you have feedback, please share with us. If
Yeah,
that's something
be
you would
creative,
like.
but it's
Yeah.
definitely not something that we are actively doing ourselves or supporting. So
Cool. Okay. Good to know. All right. Okay, we got it back up.
Yep,
Yeah,
got it back up.
we need to do a quick little refresh because Remy's got a lot going on with his computer right now. Thank you for
Yeah,
your
and I'm
patience, everyone.
running a lot of things at the same time,
He is.
so
As a
expect it.
usual dev, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing you might also notice that I haven't talked about yet is that you've got a step into and a step out button. What might these be for? Well, in our case here, we have prefabs within prefab, and this will actually allow you to go into a deeper level prefab. So if I was to edit in place and then edit in place this again, like the workflow kind of wouldn't make sense. So because we know you're already in the edit in place workflow, and we detect that it's a prefab, all we'll offer is a step into. So now what it's doing is literally editing in place that prefab instead of the one I was previously editing. So now I am modifying the roof itself. So if I take that window and delete it, so now it's dark, and I actually save all of these changes, we'll see that all of the tops that were using that, even though it wasn't the same exact building, now have that missing, because even though I started editing this prefab over here, which is the entire building, because I used step in and it's a prefab within a prefab, again, I'll step in that roof. Then you can see that I was actually editing this prefab. And as you can see, if I click on things that are just entities, there's no option to step into because these are not prefabs. So there's nothing to step into. But if I wanted to go back to my original level that I was editing, I stepped out and now I am back at editing this level of prefab. There's still some limitations that we're working into that right now, if I make some modifications in here and I step out, I don't yet see the modifications. So I need to basically, I can modify multiple levels and then apply them, and all of the modifications to different levels of prefabs will be applied. So we're working on making that a bit more streamlined and a bit more intuitive, so that you might need to save every time you made changes into a level so that you can see the changes applied when you go back to the other level. So it'll be clearer what you are actually modifying. Because right now, when stepping in and stepping out, it works, but if you're not mentally mapping how it works when switching, it might be a bit jarring.
Cool. Everyone's excited for that too. We've got some great things to show off today. I appreciate it, team. Let's see if we can grab some questions. If in the future the plan, let's see. Is dragging and dropping to create an entity or actor the default currently?
Right now, that feature doesn't exist. So no, it still is creating actors by default for everything that you drag and drop inside of the world viewer. If you drag something in the prefab editor, if it's an asset as component that's available, it will always be entities. It's really because we need to do some of the extra work to offer an editor preference that we still haven't done it for the world, but that is definitely something that's incoming.
Let's see. Forgive me if this is off topic, but it sounds a little similar. Is creative underscore device editables gonna be supported in the future?
Oh, I'm going to interpret that as like creative devices being able to be put into prefabs or as children of entities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it is something that we're working on. I can't say that it's an end of year, like this year thing, but we actively have devs starting to look into the refactoring that has to take place to make that work. So yeah, it is something we plan to try and support.
I might be butchering this question, but someone was asking, it sounds like is the future plan for the whole project to be an entity?
Yes. So like the idea is that it's kind of entities or prefabs all the way down. There's really no reason that the level itself isn't just a big prefab.
Will this prefab?
Settings,
Oh,
legacy, of
sorry, I
course.
didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. Someone said, will this prefab change let's see, will this prefab change to work more like levels come? Okay. Will the prefab change to work more like levels come with more levels?
I don't know that I followed the question.
Yeah, that might be. If whoever asked that question, if you have more detail to share, that'd be amazing.
I mean, the
Oh, is
goal is
this
for prefabs to be flexible enough to replace an entire level. So whatever you find right now in a level, you should be able to have that at the prefab level and consider that prefab as a level. It's never going to be like a level instance where you can open only one at a time, because that's the beauty of prefabs, is that they're just prefabs, and in the end levels will be able to be just prefabs, and you could have an experience that you built multiple levels yourself and you spawn the entire level inside of the same map. That would not be very optimal, but that's the kind of things that we're expecting people to be able to do in the end, because prefabs can be anything.
Yeah, we will still have the limitation of one level per island. I mean, you can have multiple levels in your project to work on, but you're still only publishing one level as for your experience. That will still be a limitation, but you'll be able to have, a bunch of prefabs that act as big chunks of the level inside that UMAP.
You can have three maps that are basically just three prefabs, and that's how you work. You never touch the UMAP, and you just edit those three different prefabs. And it could be the same prefab with just small variations put into it. That's what you consider your different maps. So it really gives power to the user with overrides and prefabs, how you can use that.
Cool. How do entities contribute to island memory usage?
They contribute in the same way that actors would. I think our tracking of entities might not be as complete as tracking of other asset types when it comes to the memory cost, but they are adding, client memory as you add more entities. You are taking up, bits on the computer, so they still take up memory. We will be optimizing the scene graph more and more, so memory should go down. Performance for like per tick behavior of meshes and all of those things will go up. Right now, it's still early days and not nearly as optimized as we can get it, but it's not free.
But if you're using just a static mesh and you're using the same static mesh inside of an actor and an entity, the cost should be relatively the same. Like there shouldn't be any major differences. And if there are, that is part of the thing that we are trying to optimize as much as possible.
For one file per entry, is folder support forthcoming? We're dying for everything being an outline or root.
You're beating us to it, because that's something that we were about to announce at the end of the stream. So yes, this is not something we're ready to showcase yet, but we know that this is something that people want, and you will not only be able to have folders for entities, but also have folders inside of your prefabs so that you can organize it directly inside of your prefabs. And you're going to be able to have folders in the level that contain both actors and entities at the same time. Like it won't be this is an entity folder and it can only create entities. No, for users, we want things to be as seamless as possible. But there are still some requirements that so that it works with prefabs that we need to make sure that we take care of. So this one is taking a bit more time in the oven, but it's definitely something that we are absolutely focused on.
Entities are currently concrete only. Will this limitation be softened in the future to allow a bracket abstract bracket? I see many user cases to have base non-concrete entity types.
I don't know that I have any. I wish I could give a better update. So it's based on the limitation that Verse currently has, that all derived classes of a concrete type need to still be concrete. So I've talked to the Verse team a little bit about it, but we don't have anything where we're changing up Verse characteristics to like soften that requirement just yet. So it is something that we're looking at though.
Okay. I like this one. This is kind of like an overall scene graph question. In scene graph, what is one mistake that you should avoid as it could potentially break the game?
Well, I hope we don't let you do anything that like completely breaks the game.
Yeah.
Wish I could just say they don't exist, but there will be bugs.
I mean, spawning too many things at runtime is
Yeah,
pretty bad.
that's what I
I
was
think
about to say.
we probably need better support in our spatial profiler to because it's really changed kind of how um, we manage memory and develop because like doing things in Fortnite creative before was like put our devices down and the world wasn't streamed in and kind of like we knew what our memory limits were at the beginning. So
It was very static.
yeah, so this is changing things quite a bit where, like your memory at the beginning is very different from your memory after 5 minutes of gameplay when a bunch of things have spawned and, like buildings have blown up and a bunch of dynamic stuff has happened. So we need to have that support in the spatial profiler creators can really dig in and find out like where the performance is bad and where going over memory and being able to test that on different platforms and get the profiling tools that everyone needs to make like performant islands that don't go over memory.
Here's one. Is it possible to edit a prefab in a level and have the changes apply to the base prefab, like how in other engines you can apply overrides that apply that to the base prefab?
Not yet. That's definitely something we want to do. But currently the focus has been on the prefab editor and now edit in place to do the prefab workflows.
Right. Ooh, are we going to be able, let's see, actually, I know I had a really good one here. Um, oh, where were you? We're getting a lot of repeats. I appreciate you all reminding me in chat that I haven't answered the question. Thank you. Oh, how does undoing work with editing in place? How does undoing work with editing in place? Is that a full question?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
everything should be transactionable. So, I mean, if I move something, well, okay, I just moved the root, so that might not be great, but uh, if I move something and save it and undo, nope, it didn't do anything. But I think these are standard prefab rules, but because there's no dedicated editor, like if I would have done that in the prefab editor, I would have moved it, saved it, and that was the transaction. But because now it's opening this other mode, anything that you do while it's open will still undo. That I am 100% sure of it. So if I do this and then Control Z, it actually did it. And maybe it didn't do it previously because I didn't have the editor properly focused. Let's just test it once again. But yeah, no. So as long as you don't apply the changes, you can still undo anything that you did within the context of that mode. But it's kind of the equivalent of opening the prefab editor and then closing it. So if you closed it, you don't have any history to go back to. So once you get into that mode, you're in edit and place mode. And if you apply it, it's just like if you closed it, which by the way is also a limitation that if I open this in the prefab editor and then I do edit in place, it will warn you, hey, this actually has the originals open somewhere else. So please do close it safely and you're good. You just got put into a good position.
Yeah, if you make a bad mistake, you can use revision control to go back, though. So that's
Yep.
a great thing about having URC built into the editor.
Awesome. Well, we got a bunch of other technical questions. Do we want to take some more, Amy, or did we want to talk about anything else before we? Did we want to go to
I
the
believe
next?
we can take some more questions.
Okay. Someone was asking, is it currently possible? If it's not, is it a future thing maybe? Can we set the mesh on a mesh underscore component without having to delete or respawn, like how set mesh bracket bracket on BP works?
It's not possible. You still have to swap out the mesh component in its entirety because the meshes themselves are the component.
Cool. How would I go about making a scene graph singleton? I've tried with a session week map and all works fine, but maps just don't work in there for me. I'm probably just doing it wrong.
Rodney, you want to go or you want me to?
No, this is all you.
All right. Okay, let me try and think on this. So singletons are a little bit weird when it comes to verse. Verse globals are meant to be truly global. So someday in the future, if you create a global variable in like a shared verse module, you would be sharing that one global across all uses of that module. So if you're sharing it between 6 games, all the games are writing to the actual same instance of that variable. So singletons become a problem there because if you try and create a global, you might not have expected it to be one for all your games. You think it's one per game. The way that I would do it within Scene Graph is that I would create a component and I would dynamically add that to the simulation entity so that you can find it from any of your other entities. So you basically just kind of mock out the idea of a singleton, but by hanging it off of an entity that you can always find within your game.
Cool. Are there any plans for per player visibility, collision, or replication, like presentation underscore component?
Um, all right, let me try and go deep on these ones. So there will be,
They're pretty deep.
yeah. This one has a lot of details in the answer, depending on how much I want to go into it. So there are plans to try to make it so that we can change up the visuals on a per player basis. It depends on the context of what you're doing within the game. So collision, you would be customizing in a way that affects all players, but you could still set up, say, the collision state so one player can go through a wall, the others can't. That one is sort of shared on the server setup for the game because really contextually you're saying, this is a game rule and these people are allowed through this wall and these ones aren't. So that's done by modifying the collision setup for an individual mesh or changing up kind of the collision states of the characters. So that's how that'll be done in the future. Other things that are just, can I see this? Can't I see this? So, we've got 4 HUDs in the game, but only Rodney can see one of the HUDs and Remy can see the other HUD. That is what we've talked about, building something that we call the presentation component. So basically a component that says this entire subtree of entities is only visible to that one player or to a subset of players. It would still, if you had collision on those things, all the players would still collide with them, but they wouldn't render on everyone's machines. So we are looking at that, and also a few other techniques around how you could customize visuals per player. We don't have any of those things so locked in that I could tell you the specific details, but it's something that is deep in the R&D side of scene graph work right now.
Someone's saying in a scene graph setup, I'm implementing an escape room system where room instances are spawned randomly. What's one workflow optimization tip you would recommend?
Definitely have a base room and modify each room that you want to customize based on this like master prefab, so that if you need to change the scale of the game or whatever, you always have so basically look at what your gameplay variations are and have as many common prefabs that you want to iterate on, so that if you need to change those base recipes, you always have one to go back to and then have different variants of those. That's how I would build something like that.
Awesome. Let's see. Ooh, this is kind of a good one. Where is your Epic's current priority when it comes to adding in more components? Yes, I am definitely fishing for a component roadmap because I need text render
Thanks,
component
Tom.
back.
Pretty sure I saw that one come by 10 minutes ago. So we are actively working. We have a bunch of teams working on various things. So now that Scene Graph is in beta and we've kind of committed to that baseline feature set, within Epic, we can have a lot of teams start going wide and building various features. So there are teams working on additional components and expanding what the existing components can do, kind of the whole mix of those things. Trying to think if there's any, there's a few main ones that I could talk about that are far enough along that I know they're coming in a reasonable time frame. So we are certainly working on a camera system and camera component type of setup.
Yep.
We're working towards making sure skeletal meshes work with the system. We'll be working to expand the physics capabilities and what you can do there. So those are a few of the really kind of big ones that we've been working on.
Cool. Does scene graph work with
Remy, you might have another one if
go
you want.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we have itemization also that's coming very soon. that's
Ooh.
coming very soon in experimental. So
There we go. There we go, chat. Does scene graph work with HLOD and or HLOD and level streaming?
Not yet. We are working to add level streaming support and looking at kind of HLOD support and how we will do that within a scene graph world.
I was excited for this one because we mentioned verse briefly, but someone's asking, what is the best way to interact between a creative underscore device and scene graph via verse?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky now. I mean, we have an example in our scene graph feature example where I am referencing a volume from a component. So I think, yeah, we want to make this a little more seamless. And I think that really, like, once creative devices are entities, that becomes a lot easier.
this
So
is the example Rodney is talking about.
yeah.
If you have the scene graph example on hand, you have the spawn prefab device, which he created himself, which just has a link to the volume.
Oh, I'm doing, yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can reference creative devices from components and hook them up. And then in the future, it will get easier too.
Well, I think we got through a good chunk of questions. What's next on the roster?
All right. Well, what's next? I just want to mention that for edit in place, as Rodney mentioned, we have all of these different workflows, edit in place, eventually entity promotion and whatnot. The goal is not to get rid of the prefab editor by all means. We know that the experience right now is not great, and we'll show you other things very soon in the stream that will make definitely this better. But we know that the renderer itself, so the 3D rendering that's part of that tool, is not great right now. As I said earlier, it doesn't have nanite, it doesn't have Lumen, it doesn't have the equivalent of being able to set up a skybox and everything. So these are all things that we know that you guys need, that internal teams need. We have a planning on it. We can't share it in details, but this is definitely something we're working very hard on. So next up is just introducing a feature that's not necessarily part of the editor, but will be really cool for a lot of you users out there. And you might already know about it, but if not, I'm glad to introduce it here. And it's that we now have a developer assistant on the Epic developer community forums. So you can ask it anything about UEFN. It really is made specifically for UEFN. And we even tested it against ChatGPT, and it really is custom built for our content, so it will make a lot of sense to use it. And you might be wondering, well, what can we use this for? You can ask it about how can I do this? How can I have custom assets? How do I import assets? Anything that has documentation, it will, of course, link you to it. But you can also expect it to do other things for LLMs. For example, if I take the spawn prefab device that Ronnie coded for this scene graph prefab examples that I have here, and we take this code and we actually go back here. And we're going to ask it to comment my verse code.
Oh, I'm glad you love it, Shawcab.
We didn't even think about it first, but we realized, yeah, this is actually a great usage because it will understand most of your verse code because it understands everything we do in UEFN.
Yeah,
And it will.
sorry, this is such a great tool for, like, people coming in that are new to verse. I forget things all the time, so I have to ask it, like, oh, how do I make classes comparable again? And then it gives me, the code I need, links me to the documentation. It writes better comments than I could ever do.
Ooh, Ian South was wondering how well does it work with scene graph?
So it needs a little more training on scene graph. Sometimes I'll ask it some scene graph questions, and it will talk to me about creative devices, and so I'd be like, no.
It's learning.
Yeah, so there's still, like, since scene graph's so early, there's still, like, we don't have a lot of code on it to train on, but we're working with that team, with our team internally, to get them some more resources that they can feed into the system here.
Cool. At hashtag says I use it for the math.
Me
It's so
too.
helpful. It knows every math
Yep.
thing you can think up.
Yep. I use it for the syntax because I still suck at first syntax. So
Mhm.
it's great to have it review anything that you do. If you have an error that you don't understand in the Visual Studio compiler, put your code in there, and in a lot of cases, it will come up with very useful answers to help you. So yeah,
Oh,
it's your best buddy to help you
Grim.
work.
Grim says it's amazing. It's helped with persistable data and been a big help. Oh, that's great. Um, oh, what would be amazing if this was scraping the bug form to let us know about open issues? Ooh, I mean, that's great feedback, TD Toda. I'll definitely document that. Since my
We
team
would like
works a
that
lot
as
with
well.
Yeah.
that.
And feedback I also gave, and which we're going to try to do in the future, is as soon as new features are out, like itemization, we want as much as possible for that assistant to be aware of those new features so that it can actually help you on them. Like if we have itemization next month and it answers you, I don't know what itemization is, I can't help you, it's not a really good assistant. So we need to make sure that we're going to be able to do that to really help you guys in the future.
Someone was asking if it stores information. I don't think it does, right? Yet.
Don't think so, no.
Yeah, that's outside of our expertise. You'd have to
And
ask.
yeah, I assume
I
in terms of like being able to pull up what you've already searched and things like that. Yeah, I don't
No,
think it
I
does that
wouldn't
yet.
expect it to, but the one thing right now is that I'm not even signed in. So maybe if you're signed in, it does have a bit more
Oh.
session tracking, but that's the beauty of it is that you can also use it without being signed in. So if you don't
Mhm.
want us to know what you're working on and that you think we might be taking your queries to build your game before you do, no, we don't do that.
Someone did ask, I think it's a pretty basic question. When multiple people work on a project that has scene graph enabled, does it affect anything while doing revision control from different versions?
Well, today you would just be you wouldn't be able to work on the UMAP at the same time because it's binary file that's exclusively checked out. Um, and then the one file per entity solves that problem by removing all the entities out of the UMAP, right?
Yeah. And if we're talking about different UEFN versions, that's not really a possibility because you guys are always working on the one that's live. So if one of your pal has somehow not updated his unrelated or version and is still working on an old one and he says he can't sync, just have him update to latest.
Someone's asking, will things from Fab be able to work with it as well? I know right now that's down, but is that the intent in the future?
That is definitely the intent in the future. It's still too soon in that part to be able to have any announcements.
Okay. Let's see. We're getting a lot of questions. I don't know if this team can speak to this, but we've gotten this a few times. People are wondering if they're the assets like doors, walls, floors, characters, all kinds of stuff. They're wondering if that stuff will be prefabs for this in UEFN, so the stuff from Fortnite. Um, I know we're constantly adding prefabs and things like that, but I
I
was
can
kind of
answer.
avoiding it because I don't think we
No,
can
no,
really
I can
say
answer.
that.
Okay,
It's a
very
lot.
much in my area of knowledge.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's also the overloaded. Like prefabs is the official term for the scene graph things, but we also use the term
Right.
prefab for
Okay.
the play sets that
Yep.
we had before in some contexts.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same thing. So we will make it so that the existing playset content can be used with scene graph. It's something that we're working on. Whether they all get rebuilt to be made of entities and components, that'd be like a long, long tail. So my expectations is that we will have some new playsets or prefabs in the future that are made scene graph first with all the entities. The other ones we will have ways that you can use them with in scene graph, even though they're still actor systems and stuff. We'll make that kind of a seamless thing that you can use. Likewise, with I think I saw a few other questions around base Fortnite content. So the meshes, the materials, any of the things that are already on disk, we will make those usable with SceneGraph as well. We just have to fix up the verse code generation and a few other characteristics. One of the things the SceneGraph does that will help with stability in the long run, Because we generate verse code for all of the things like meshes, materials, and their inputs. That means that we have to guarantee backwards compatibility between the verse code that gets generated every time we push a new build. So that content we need to audit and make sure that it's very stable and has the right names for everything, but it will guarantee that it doesn't change or break projects in the future. So, we will be working on that.
Cool. Will there ever be a way to reorganize entity components or have them sort themselves?
I would love that. We've definitely talked about it and kind of being able to reorder it the way you want, being able to, drag and reorder them. It's definitely on our radar, huh?
All right. Well, we've got a good chunk, and then I guess we'll go through the other things we want to cover, and then we'll end the stream with a good amount of questions because they're still coming in.
Right. So I want to get into some really minor improvements, but that are really quality of life. So if I was to create an actor here, let's say a light or anything actually, and we have the transform, so we have the location here. It used to be that they wouldn't be compatible, but since we released the scene graph, we actually made them compatible. So if I paste, even though one is in the XYZ format and the other one is in the left, up, and forward format, then it is still copy pastable. So that was not possible before, but I just did it. Right click to copy. So if I copy this, and I'll do it again just so you guys can see, and maybe I'll add a mesh so it's more visible.
Ooh. Hello, everyone. Hi, iFlown.
So I have this cube, and if I paste the translation, as you can see, it actually pasted, and it's going to be the same for rotation. So if I copy this and paste this, so it is now fully interoperable. You don't need to do some weird things, and yeah, everyone's going to be happy about that. The other minor
Awesome.
stuff is that we fixed the browse to assets that was everywhere. So you have that control B. Sometimes it just didn't work, but now we've made it work everywhere. So there's no place regarding assets, regarding whatever you could find that would not work. Now it always works and goes to where it is on the disk. So it was a minor annoyance, but a lot of people still reported it. So we wanted to make good on that. And the last but not least is more features that I want to give a preview of. So this is the part of the conversation where it's not going to be in 38. We are still working on this, but it is future-looking work. So I have this other version that I have booted here. And at first glance, you might not notice much because nothing really in this view has changed. But if I go and open the prefab editor over here, you'll notice that something really is different, and that is that we have custom columns for the outliner. So what we're basically doing is working to parity so that a lot of the tools that we use for prefab editor have parity with the actor world. So that was one thing that was critically missing, is just being able to have the prefab column. So if I go back to the other editor and I open a prefab that has nested prefabs, let me just find one. So this, it's really hard to see at this level what is a prefab and what is not. Like you need to click on it and then you have this button here. So it's really not in your face. But with the new prefab editor outliner, it is very much in your face that anything that has, well, just like you would expect in the world, that has this is because it's a prefab. You can click on it and it actually opens it in its own prefab editor. So yay for that. That's already excellent. But there's two more things to show in here. We have the alerts column. So if you were working with anything that was non-concrete and you had one in your prefab, if you had one in the world, so I'm just going to add, I just need my details panel back. If I was, but basically if I had an error, you would see it here in this column. I might actually do this in another editor here. Test non-concrete. And so I have this error here because I have a property that requires initialization. So if I had that at the level of the prefab in this editor, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know at which level it was. But now with the new editor, you actually do see it. So now if I was to change that to 2, now that property is initialized and you don't have the error anymore. Somehow I still see it, but that's most likely because I just need to save. Well, that's weird that the alert is still there, but anyway, that's what the column is used for. And finally, the one thing that we're also working on is to have better filtering. So the search feature will be ramped up, but also the filters will actually allow you to filter for prefabs, for things that have a transform component, things that have a mesh component, or things that have an alert, which right now nothing has, so you only show the root. But these are all filters that can be added on top of each other and, of course, create all of these custom buttons here. So you can combine them, and you're going to be able to combine them with the search field. So basically getting with feature parity, but also introducing new filtering capabilities that will be available both in the prefab editor and also in the world outliner. So we're really excited to be able to bring you this, but sadly we still don't have any TA for this. And finally, the last thing we want to give a sneak peek of is that we're working on refactoring a bit the details panel. So I could show you it live, but it's still work in progress. So I have this screenshot of work in progress. And basically, it's the whole cards layout that we have. You know, those rounded edges and that you have all the cards visible, all the components visible when you select your entity. We want to go back to something that's closer to the actor model so that you have this component list over here, which actually is also eventually when we can reorder them, make it a lot easier for the workflow because these are lists that we know we're used to drag and drop in them and reorder them. So yeah, as you can see, we've included the feedback for overrides. So anytime there's an override or a component is unique, basically anything you would have gotten in the previous cards layout will be included in this new way of showcasing information. And we're doing this to better move forward, basically. There are features that we know you're looking for that you haven't heard today. And is he going to say it? Is he going to say it? Multi-selection. There you go. I said it. We're not able to offer multi-selection right now with the cards layout because of some choices that were made and putting lots of effort into it. We do eventually want to offer back a proper card layout, but in the meantime, we're going back in time to better move forward. So we're going to have a UI that's going to be more in line with actors, but eventually that will allow us to have multi-selection on components, on multiple entities, on multiple properties. So you can do what you expect to be done, but also being able to apply overrides and clear overrides on those multi-selections, which is also part of the work that makes it harder.
Okay. We did get a question in chat. Are there plans for allowing us to place SG prefabs into folders within the outliner? And we got a response in chat that yes. Yes, we will be. Thank you, team. All right. How are we doing, Remy, on time? Is there much more we want to cover? Do we want to go back to questions? How are we feeling?
We could go back to question because that's pretty much the
Cool.
we've pretty much covered the entire set. We've mentioned also entity promotion, that is something that we're working on. We've mentioned the folders for the entity outliner and the multi-selection, that whole outliner refactor. These are all things that we don't have dates yet. So these are all the ones we don't have dates yet, but I guarantee you we're hardly working on them. Working hardly, not hardly working. Sorry, my French.
You're good. Let's see. Okay, so we've got quite a few. Oh, this is kind of a fun one. Actually, no, I'm just gonna ask it because it's too fun. What's one feature you'd like to see added to the scene graph, to scene graph to make it more practical for the whole team?
This is going to be Rodney and Remy asking me for features.
Yes, always. I think, yeah, the big one for me is like just being able to get access to the player, right? I mean, that opens up so many possibilities with scene graph and the gameplay you can make. My job's pretty fun in the sense that I get to use the tools and make things, and then complain to Curtis, like, "Hey, I had to do it. I had to do this hacky thing to do what I wanted. We need to, really make, do it the correct way and get that out there." So yeah, I think like once we have access to, like physics overlaps and raycasts against the player, and then being able to do damage or teleport them. And I mean, it just opens up a ton of gameplay possibilities once we have those key pieces in place.
We got this one a couple times. Are there any plans to enable tick event function for creators?
Um, we
We
should
have it.
have like events already for the pre-physics, post-physics portions of the frame.
Ooh,
We do have a bug with our verse plugin, and for that shows red squiggly lines underneath it when you try to subscribe to it. But it still compiles and works. It's just, I don't know why it's angry at it.
it's just angry. um, okay. I'm hanging a lot of geo/child objects off of a camera for my UEFN game. Will SceneGraph support a camera as an entity in the near future? Ooh.
Yep, we are working on a camera solution within SceneGraph. Specific shape of it still being worked on, but it would be an entity or entity plus other systems.
Cool. Are we going to be able to use meshes that are in reference content as mesh component meshes once again?
Someday.
Someday, chat. How can you implement the required objects or effects on an island to follow the minimum and recommended system requirements?
Ooh, that's a good question. Not the best person to answer that one. That's um yeah, we need to talk to our profiling team a bit more about that.
Cool. When can we put a scene graph asset in a folder with a non-scene graph asset in the outliner?
Coming soon.
Coming
No
soon.
ETA, but
No
coming soon.
ETA. Cool. We're run through these. Let's see. Ooh, how far away is instancing support from being supported by SceneGraph? When looking at memory cost, I believe HISM is the best at the moment.
It's still a ways off. We're looking at performance maybe holistically. We have some sample projects internally that try and spawn a million entities and see what happens there. So we are doing that internal profiling and optimization. For the time being, HISMs is still going to be the lowest memory overhead solution for a lot of meshes being placed in the world until those optimizations come in.
Cool. Will prefabs be able to be viewable and collidable per player eventually? Or is that something we would like?
Yeah, we answered that one a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
but yes, viewable per player, collidable per player is more of a physics setup question. So yeah, you set up the physics in such a way that one player's pawn can walk through a thing, but others can't.
Mm-hmm.
As like all the verse code and all the things you're building in scene graph are basically server centric. So you aren't really running like a different copy of the scene graph per client that can diverge. You're just writing it once and we make it work everywhere. So when it comes to physics, you have to set the rules of who can go through the door kind of at a server side.
I don't know if we can speak to this entirely, but with memory calculation, does it account for all the prefabs entities in your project not in the world? For instance, if I spawn things in the world as part of the island, is there a memory calc or do we need a memory calc for spawned item?
That's basically what Rodney was talking about, that we need to have better tools to track that, because right now if you spawn things, they're not statically placed on your level, they won't be taken into account.
Yeah, if your prefab is not in your level, it should not count against memory, the runtime memory. You'll count against your on disk limit, but it shouldn't matter for the the UMAP. So I mean, um, we should probably test this, but the like if you have a bunch of prefabs you're using as like for testing, or and then they're not actually in your UMAP or just like making your development easier, then it shouldn't account against the memory limit.
Will there be a performance increase for adding child entities in the future? And if so, will it be more performant than normal prop spawning?
Sorry, can I get that one more time?
Will there be a performance increase for adding child entities in the future? And if so, will it be more performant than normal prop spawning?
So yes, as we optimize the system, using child entities should be cheaper than props. Props usually come with a decent amount of overhead to them, partly because they do a lot of things in Fortnite. Like they may have, you know, all the collision and the wobbly effects and everything. So if you don't need those characteristics, being able to spawn just simple things as child entities in a prefab is going to be a much less overhead solution.
Let's see. Are we going to be able to use meshes that are in referenced content as mesh component meshes once again? Did we answer that? I feel like
Yeah,
we did.
yeah,
Okay.
we will
We got a few
eventually.
repeats in here. um,
Good, we know the themes.
yeah. Now you yeah, I'd be happy to share how many times each one was if that helps. Um, what are the plans to expand persistable data to scene graph, like persistable components or entities?
Still very much a work in progress. Nothing that I could say right now.
Cool. Any plans to support non-concrete entity types in code? It is very useful to define type constraints without exposing to editor or custom prefab types.
Yeah, we jumped into that one earlier. So yeah, it's a verse limitation right now. We'd have to change some of the characteristics of verse before we unlock that feature. So no, I can't say any specific time frame or whether that will or won't be able to happen. A lot of people to talk to first.
Uh, oh, interesting. I don't know if we'll know the answer to this. Is the ballistic team working with scene graph? And are the ballistic items made through itemization? Interesting cue.
Can't talk about that.
We can't talk about that. We don't know. What's the what is the let's see. Is it possible to add scene graph prefabs in data layers?
Data layers are not in the concept that we have right now because you need streaming first before you can have data layers, but it's definitely something that we are thinking about and looking forward to implement in the future. But got to go with streaming first.
All right. Let's see. I think we pretty much oh, here's a new one. I guess we can go with this as a final one. Currently, all project files are exposed, even ones that we don't want or need to use in verse. Will these improvements allow us? Will this improve to allow us exposing only specific assets that we may need?
That's a curious question.
I'm trying to see if I understand the question. Might
I'll
need to.
repeat it because I think I screwed it up.
Oh, so
yeah, currently all
on our
projects.
asset reflection,
Okay.
everything is generated in the asset digest, right?
Right.
So like so if I have like 50 textures in my project and I only need to reference 3 of them through burst, like I don't need to see the other 47, right? I don't care. I don't care that they're in my asset digest.
Yeah. So I don't have an immediate answer to it. It is something that we could work on fixing. I think so. I know that we won't automatically like force those assets to be a part of your project if you're not actually using them through verse code, or at least we can make that happen if that was a bug before. I believe it should be fixed. Um, Being able to hide them, I think to some degree, what we're going to be doing is more looking at the add components menu and those types of workflows and making them better, because really you should be able to see all of the content within your project that you want shared and use all of it. It's when we have like a single giant drop down of every single mesh in the project that becomes a problem. So I think those are going to be a lot of just workflow improvements rather than the code not existing or having to make it that you like manually opt in diverse code generation per item. Because I think that would probably be like against the workflows that you'd want, that for every mesh you'd have to right click and say, please add verse. Now I can use it with scene graph. So
One file per entity exists as an option in the project settings in the current build. Does enabling it just mean when it comes it will already be enabled, or does it affect everything right now?
Rodney?
Well, it's one you've been looking at the most. The we work on so many different things in the future that like we forget like what is already out.
That's
So
fair.
Yeah.
it's like we're on like so many different builds.
yeah.
It's okay too if we don't know right now, but yeah.
But I mean, enabling one file per entity, it will opt you in to newly created entities are automatically put into the file. So, it's well worth trying out, but it doesn't automatically reshape your project, right? Like it leaves the
No,
existing.
no, no, no. Yeah, that's why I showed that command. You need to externalize things or internalize things. But that's also the problem I ran into is I believe I had already externalized thing and I turned off the option and you still had things with leftovers. So I would have needed to re-enable it, internalize everything, then turn it back off.
So
So
create a new
yeah.
test project, turn it on, play with it.
Yeah.
If it's working well, then use it on your main project.
But I mean, I've turned it on and off and on and off after doing the internalization and externalization many times, and nothing was broken. Still, back up your project or use URC, but I'm confident that I didn't have any issues with it.
We got one last question here. Will there be a more general way for changing materials of a mesh component instead of explicitly doing it for every different mesh comp?
There will be, so what we've talked about there is being able to add interfaces to the meshes so that you could say all of these meshes have this named material slot on them. Verse still wants to have a static validation of all your content, so it's not going to go back to kind of the loose way that this used to work, where you just like arbitrarily set mesh slot 0, not really knowing what that is. But yeah, we would add a way that meshes could say, I conform to an interface that has a specific material named global material or something. And so you could iterate through all your meshes of that type and then set those specific materials.
Oh, one last question from the other chat. Can we move a sub scene graph component from one to another dynamically during the game?
No. Components, so components can be moved between entities during the game. Like once you create a component, add it to an entity, it is locked to that entity. You can remove it and add it back. If you wanted to move it to another one, you'd have to create just a new copy of the entity and a copy over the relevant data. You can move entities around, but you can't move components.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We had around 80 questions today, so I really appreciate you all answering. And chat, thank you so much for coming with great questions for the team here. There is, if don't forget, there is a channel in our official Discord, our FN Create Discord for Scene Graph. So if you have any thoughts, questions, if you want to share with the community, make sure you're there. We'll be keeping an eye out and saying hi. But do share all of your feedback in our official forums as well. That's where we're kind of like logging all of that and keeping track. That's the best place to do it, to get it directly to the team. But yeah, otherwise, any other final thoughts on Scene Graph, guys? Thanks for all the hard work you've all worked on for this. It's been a lot of love and chat this entire time.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Try out the scene graph. Let us know how it's working. Let us know what you need. Keep the requests coming.
And we're keeping on working hard on everything that you're requesting and things that you don't even know that you want. And yeah, we'll keep making it great for you guys. I mean, we're in this for the long run. So
yeah, definitely keep the feedback coming on Discord and the forums, and we get all the bug reports and we go through them as a team, and so we definitely see it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, team. And thank you so much, chat and creators and developers, everyone who's here. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you soon on the next live stream. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.